here I am on the way to Cemetery, Tennessee, in the Cumberland Plateau. Gonna take a look at these famous tent graves or cone graves, which are angular shaped stones set up like a tent. And as far as I know, they're only in Tennessee mainly, and this is in this area mainly around Middle Tennessee. There is some, I think maybe Arkansas, but the story behind these things are that there's not really an origin known, but the theory is they were made mainly for protection. And they certainly, by what they look on the internet, I've never saw one in real life, but I'm fixing to. There's a two big stones sitting up like a tent over the grave, which protects it from animals or grazing or digging, or the human animal that's still a grave robber, or perhaps sinking into the grave, things of that nature. But I got another theory, and I'll have to kind of see when I get up here, because I think these stones particularly have stars on them. A lot of people think, you know, also that they may be there to keep in witches. There'll be a lot of witches in Tennessee if that be true. There's got stars on some of the gravestones, which people say pentagrams. They always relate that. I've seen that before. I don't think that is. Even I got that information looking on the internet, but also my wife even knew about that. It's called the Order of the Eastern Star, or Star of Bethlehem, which is a Freemasonry type organization of females organization, but actually I think males could join. So I did not know that. That's something brand new I just learned. Pretty cool. But when we get up here, let's test and see what my theory is. I'm thinking if it's related to the Masonaries, then that's why the stones are like they are. But I'd have to see the grave markers match those to see if my theory is correct like that. That would make more sense to me, a Masonaries type object. Right, let's go up there. Be there in a few minutes there. Good deal. We have arrived, and there they are. Cool. Let's take a look at it. It's kind of one of the end of it here. The other end, we'll walk up toward the famous tent cone graves. Call them tent or cone because they look like a tent or the top of a house. They kind of remind me of a vault, kind of a nice looking vault. And you can look at this one right here and see that it has a star on it. So the theory is that of the Freemasons, which is the Order of the Eastern Star. That's not to say that witches couldn't be buried anywhere, actually. And you know, this one's 1896. This was an infant. Let's look at this one. I'm going to kind of look at all these if I can. See, that one has a star. Okay, there's a difference in that star and the other ones. Stars point down, and that one is pointing down. Here's one. This one doesn't really have a star on it. Here, this one's 1895, and you can see it's a James, and the actual star is pointing down. So I believe that's why these are like they are, because of the Masons. So that's what I think, the theory that I have. It's a Mason thing. Let's check this one out. This one doesn't, I don't really see a star. It's actually stamps, 1887. Okay. So this one right here is Mary. Try to keep the stones from falling. So this is the sun. Again, the star's pointing down. Some of them don't have stars. 1880. And some of them probably won't have a star because they're very 1879. They probably just sketched those in as best they could. Memory of a sun. They have, some people say some weird markings, but I mean doesn't mean anything. Just people mainly wrote different things back then. Okay, so here's a star that's orientated normally, and I can't really tell the name of it. Looks like it's abbreviated. But I don't know if the internet's right about that part of it. My wife already knew about this because she knew somebody that was familiar with the Order of the Eastern Star, the Star of Bethlehem. And see, this star is pointing down. So there is a difference in the way the stars are orientated. What about that? I don't think there's any ghost here. This is Nancy. But see, the stars are different. Here's one pointing down. There's people and this one says 1895. And this is Sanford. So it's definitely a male. And there's the typical So they're kind of not totally set up to where they're meet each other like a roof. I just would imagine that they still buried him all the way down in the ground. And here's a star pointed down, or maybe they had a hard time. Okay, so this is Nancy. Another Nancy. That right there doesn't have a star on it. There's some rocks over here. Basically, this is it. Kind of a small graveyard, quite unique, I would think. Here's one that's kind of, you can see the materials in it. There's no body sitting up there actually. This is just kind of cool stuff. So cool cemetery looking. This around here. Okay, so I went out to Middle Tennessee, and I visit the famous comb or tent graves that I found out in this particular cemetery. But this one had a different story to it that I found out. This was called the Witches' Graveyard because there's pentagrams actually on the tombstones. There's a good picture. So I have three theories of that. And the story behind that, of course, is if it points down, it's supposed to represent evil or bad things or Satan or witches, and if it points up, it's supposed to represent good, heaven, and maybe the Star of Bethlehem. I immediately think that theory is incorrect in here because the first thing I saw was this is an infant, and yes, the star is pointing down, and an infant is not a witch. It's not evil. It's an innocent child. So that theory I don't believe in. Just because of that right there, that throws out. So let's go take a look at a second theory, and that is that there's a Freemasonry organization called the Order of the Eastern Star, and they actually have their star orientated with the pointing down type of direction. So it could be related to that. I thought about that, did some research, and it's mainly was kind of I think a female organization starting out, but they have mixed male and female. They're not necessarily one or the other, but it could be again the Order of the Eastern Star, Freemasonry. Then the third theory that I have, which I think is more likely than any of the rest of them, is that if you go back to some of the original stones, what I'm calling original stones, it look like they're on the beginning of the actual older tent graves. They're more polygon, and none of them have a star on them. So this looks like these were done originally and more realistically going with the actual tent and they don't have a star on them. So I believe that was a different possible engraver, maybe, that did those. And then you come along toward the newer ones, what I would call, or maybe even replaced ones, and they're all kind of curved. Most of them are all kind of curved at the top or circular. And all these have different types of stars, not necessarily all pointing down, some pointing up. This is actually sketched across, and then you have points in the middle of them, which I think could have possibly been where they had the tool to put a pivot point so they could hold the actual inscription, engraving outline of the mold or whatever they used, a piece of metal frame. That's just my theory on that anyway. I don't know if that's true or not, but as you can see, different stars, different ways, up and down. So I believe this was maybe a different engraver came back and did these, because these are different looking tombstones than the originals, and they put that on as their trademark, and that's what I believe this is all about. Now, it could have been they were putting an emblem on there to represent the Star of Bethlehem, something like that, and they didn't really think about, well, whether it's pointing up or down all the time like everybody else is thinking. So that's my theory about it. Enjoy the rest of the movie.